This is a story about secrets buried so deep that uncovering them destroys everything you thought you knew about your own existence. It's about war, about the cycles of violence that consume generations, and about a mother's love that persists even through unimaginable horror. What begins as a simple inheritance becomes a journey into the darkest corners of human experience, building toward a twist you never see coming, one so devastating that it will haunt you forever. Our story begins in the quiet, sterile environment of a notary's office in Montreal, Canada. Two twins in their early 20s, Jean and Simon Marwan, sit waiting to hear their mother's last will and testament. Their mother, Nawal Marwan, has recently died after suffering a stroke at a community swimming pool. They barely knew their mother. She was always distant, locked away in her own world, rarely speaking about her past or showing them the warmth that other children received from their parents. But Jean Labelle, the notary and their mother's longtime employer, has something else entirely to share with them. He places two sealed envelopes on the desk. One envelope is addressed to the father, the other is addressed to the brother. Jean and Simon exchange confused glances. Their father, as far as they knew, died years ago during the war in Lebanon, and they've never had a brother. They were raised as only children, just the two of them and their silent mother. Jean explains that these were Nawal's final wishes. She wants her children to find these two people and deliver the letters. Only after both letters have been given to their intended recipients can Nawal be properly buried. Until then, her gravestone must remain blank. No name, no dates, nothing. It's as if she refuses to rest until her children complete this task. Simon reacts with immediate anger. He's had enough of his mother's cryptic behavior, her emotional distance, her refusal to be a normal parent. Now, even in death, she's manipulating them, sending them on some absurd quest for people who probably don't even exist. He refuses to participate. He wants nothing to do with it. As far as he's concerned, their mother is dead, and whatever secrets she kept can die with her. But Jeanne is different. Where Simon feels anger, Jeanne feels an overwhelming need to understand. She's always wondered about her mother's silence, the way Nawal would stare into space for hours, lost in memories that she never shared. Jeanne sees this as an opportunity, perhaps her last chance, to know who her mother really was. The trail begins in the Middle East, in a country that Nawal left decades ago. Jeanne makes her decision immediately. She'll go. She'll find the truth, with or without her brother's help. The story then shifts backward in time, to a small village in the Middle East during a more peaceful era. We meet young Nawal, a beautiful Christian girl barely out of her teens. She falls in love with a young man named Wahab, a refugee, likely Palestinian. But there's a problem, a fundamental divide that makes their love forbidden. He's from a different religious background, and in this world, such relationships are deadly. Nawal becomes pregnant, and for a brief moment, she allows herself to hope, but her family discovers the truth. Her brothers are enraged, ready to kill both her and her lover to restore the family's honor. As Nawal and Wahab attempt to escape together, her brothers shoot Wahab dead right in front of her eyes. They turn their guns on Nawal, ready to execute her as well. But her grandmother intervenes at the last moment. She makes Nawal promise something crucial, that she will love her baby, that she will never abandon this child. Nawal gives birth to a baby boy. She holds him for just a few precious moments, counting his tiny toes, memorizing every detail of his face. Before they take him away, the grandmother does something significant. She tattoos 3 small dots on his right heel, a permanent mark that will allow them to identify him if they're ever reunited. It's a desperate attempt to maintain a connection to this child. The grandmother takes the baby to an orphanage at Kfar Khout. Nawal's lover is dead. The baby is gone. Everything Nawal loved has been ripped away from her. But even in her grief, she makes a vow. One day, no matter how long it takes, she will find her son. Time passes. Nawal leaves her village and manages to attend university in the city, in a place called Daresh. She studies, educating herself, transforming from a heartbroken village girl into an intelligent, determined young woman. At university, she makes friends who share her progressive ideals. They talk about peace, about building bridges between different communities, about creating a better future. But while Nawal is studying, the country is descending into chaos. A civil war is erupting. Tensions between religious groups are escalating. Militias are forming. Violence is becoming commonplace. When the war reaches Nawal's area, she becomes desperate to find her son. She discovers that the orphanage at Kfar Khout, where he was placed, has been destroyed in the fighting. She learns that surviving children have been moved to a refugee camp. Determined to reach them, she needs to cross dangerous territory. One day, Nawal boards a bus filled with Muslim refugees heading toward the camp. She disguises herself as Muslim, veiling her hair, hoping to blend in and avoid detection. The bus travels through the countryside, carrying innocent civilians, mostly women and children, seeking safety. Suddenly, the bus is stopped at a checkpoint. Armed Christian nationalists board the vehicle. They shoot the driver immediately. Then they begin firing into the bus, killing most of the passengers in a hail of bullets. The sound is deafening, the carnage unimaginable. When the shooting stops, only a few people remain alive, Nawal and a Muslim woman clutching her young daughter. The militants prepare to set the bus on fire, dousing it with gasoline. The survivors panic, trying to escape toward the back of the bus. In desperation, Nawal shows the militants her crucifix and tells them she's Christian. They spare her. She then tries to save the Muslim woman's daughter, claiming the child as her own. For a moment, it seems like it might work, but the little girl, terrified and crying, breaks free and runs back toward the bus, calling for her mother. One of the militants shoots the child in the back of the head. The girl falls dead in front of Nawal's eyes. The militants restrain Nawal as they set the bus ablaze, leaving her standing alone in the desert beside the burning wreckage, the only survivor of a massacre. This moment transforms Nawal completely. The woman who believed in peace and education realizes that in this new world, such beliefs are meaningless. The violence, the senseless murder, the sight of that little girl being shot, it all changes her forever. She makes her way back to the city and joins a radical Muslim resistance group, led by a man named Shamsuddin. She takes up arms against the forces that killed the people on the bus. She becomes a courier first, then a fighter, and eventually something more dangerous. Her handlers give her a mission. She's to pose as a French tutor for the son of a prominent Christian nationalist leader. She's to gain their trust, get close to the leader, and then assassinate him. Nawal accepts the assignment. She prepares meticulously, earns the family's trust, and smuggles a gun into their home. When the moment comes, she fires, killing the leader. The man falls, and chaos erupts around her. Nawal tries to escape, but she's captured almost immediately. She's beaten, thrown into a vehicle, and taken to the notorious Kfar Riyat prison, a place that has become legendary for its brutality. Back in the present day, Jeanne has arrived in the Middle East. She's following the clues, tracking down people who knew Nawal decades ago. The country has changed dramatically since the war ended. There's an uneasy peace now, but the scars remain visible everywhere. Jeanne visits refugee camps, war-torn villages, and hospitals. She meets people who remember Nawal, though many are reluctant to speak. Slowly, she pieces together her mother's story. She learns about the baby taken away, about Nawal's search for her son, about the bus massacre, and about the assassination. And then she learns about the prison. Nawal was held in Kfar Riyat prison for 15 years. The enormity of that number is almost incomprehensible. Jeanne visits the abandoned prison, now a shell of its former horror. She meets a former guard who remembers prisoner number 72. The guard tells her that Nawal became known as the woman who sings. Despite the torture, despite the suffering all around her, she would sing. Her voice would echo through the cells, drowning out the screams of other prisoners being tortured. It was an act of defiance, of maintaining her humanity in hell. But the prison authorities wanted to break her. They called in their most brutal torturer, a man known only as Abu Tariq. He was feared by everyone, prisoners and guards alike. His methods were unspeakably cruel. The guard's voice becomes barely audible when he explains what Abu Tariq did to Nawal. He tortured her repeatedly. He raped her, again and again, for years. And at some point during those 15 years of captivity and assault, Nawal became pregnant. She gave birth to twins in that prison, a boy and a girl, conceived through rape and torture. Jeanne is devastated by this revelation. She calls Simon, and despite his resistance, he finally flies to join her. Together, they meet a nurse who had worked at the prison, now dying herself. The nurse confirms the story. She tells them that she secretly saved the babies when they were born, hiding them from the guards who would have killed them. After Nawal was eventually released from prison, the nurse returned the twins to her. The twins realize they're talking about themselves. They were those babies, born in that prison, the products of years of rape and torture. Every assumption they had about their origins is shattered. But they still need to find their brother, the first son. Using records from the orphanage and information from various sources, they piece together his story. The boy's name was Nihad of May. He was adopted by a family after the orphanage was destroyed, but during the war, that family was killed in an attack. The boy survived and ended up alone. Nihad was found by Christian militia forces. They took him in and trained him as a child soldier. The war consumed his childhood, turning him into something barely human. He became a sniper, efficient and deadly. Eventually, he was captured by nationalist forces. They turned him to their side and trained him for a specific purpose: torture. Nihad was sent to work at Kfar Riat prison. There, he was given a new name, Abu Tarek. Jean and Simon sit in stunned silence as they realize the truth. Their brother is also their father. The baby their mother searched for, the son she never stopped loving, grew up to become the man who tortured and raped her for 15 years, the man who made her pregnant with them. But there's more to the story. Something that happened years after Nawal was released from prison and came to Canada with her twins. Simon meets with Shamsuddin, the resistance leader, who reveals the final piece of the puzzle. He tells Simon that Nihad, who became Abu Tarek, was also given a new identity and a new life in Canada after the war ended, just like many others involved in the conflict. He now lives under the name Nihad Harmani. The revelation hangs in the air, but then the story shifts to a crucial flashback, one that Jeanne had a vague memory of but couldn't quite understand. Years after arriving in Canada, Nawal was in a community pool one day. When stopped to rest at the edge of the pool, her eyes fell on a foot. There, on the right heel of the man standing there, were 3 small dots. Nawal's heart must have stopped in that moment. After all these years, after all the searching, after giving up hope, here was her son. The baby she had marked, the child who was stolen from her, was standing right in front of her. She approached him, unable to speak, her mind racing. When the man turned around to face her, Nawal's entire world shattered completely. It was Abu Tarek. The face she would never forget, the voice that had sung while he tortured her, the man who had violated her countless times over 15 years. And now she understood the full, unspeakable horror of what had happened. Her own son, the baby she had loved and searched for her entire life, had been the one who tortured her. He was the father of the twins she was raising. The boy born from love had become an instrument of her destruction. Abu Tarek didn't recognize her. So many years had passed, and he had tortured so many people in that prison. She was just another woman at a public pool. He had no idea that he had just destroyed the last remnants of his mother's sanity. He simply turned away and went about his day. Nawal stood frozen, unable to move, unable to process what she had just discovered. The shock of learning this impossible truth caused her to suffer a stroke right there at the pool. She collapsed, and though she survived initially, she never fully recovered. The stroke eventually led to her decline and death. Jeanne remembers now. She had been there that day. She had seen her mother sitting motionless in the chair, staring into space, but she was too young to understand what had happened. That was the day everything changed, the day her mother learned a truth so terrible that it eventually killed her. Back in the present, Jean and Simon now understand everything. They know who their brother is, who their father is, and why they're the same person. They know their mother discovered this truth years ago and carried that knowledge alone until it destroyed her. Shamsuddin tells them that Nihad is living in Canada, not far from where they grew up. The twins return home, carrying the 2 letters their mother left behind. They locate his address, a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. They wait outside his building, watching for him. When they see him approaching, they call out to him. He stops, confused, as these 2 strangers walk toward him. Without a word of explanation, they hand him the package containing the 2 envelopes. He looks at them, questions forming on his lips, but they simply turn and walk away. He walks into the building and opens the first one, the letter addressed to the father. Nawal's voice, preserved in writing, tells him about the twins, about the children born from his assaults, about how, despite everything, despite the horror of how they were conceived, they are beautiful. She tells him that they would deliver the letters to him. Nihad runs out after the twins, but they are gone. Nawal tells him that she has moved beyond hatred, that she has found a way to embrace these children. Inside his apartment, he opens the second letter, the one addressed to the son. This one destroys him completely. Nawal tells him the truth. She tells him how he was conceived in love, how she held him when he was born, how she marked him with 3 dots so she would always know him. She tells him how she searched for him, how she never stopped loving him, even after everything that happened. She tells him how she recognized him at the swimming pool, how that moment of recognition, of understanding the full circle of tragedy, destroyed her. The man sits in his apartment, surrounded by the ruins of his identity. He now knows that he tortured his own mother for years. He knows that the twins he's just learned about are both his children and his siblings. He knows that every terrible thing he did in that prison, he did to the woman who gave birth to him, who loved him, who spent her life searching for him. The story ends with Nawal finally receiving her gravestone. Her name is carved into the stone at last, along with her dates. The twins have fulfilled her wishes. They've delivered both letters to the same person, completing the impossible task she set for them. In the notary's office, Jean Labelle gives Jean and Simon a third letter, one addressed to both of them. In it, Nawal tells her children that she understands how they were conceived, understands the horror of their origins, but she wants them to know that they are not defined by that horror. They are innocent. They are her children, and despite everything, despite the circumstances of their birth, she loves them. She tells them that by uncovering the truth, by delivering the letters, by learning her story, they have finally freed her. The silence that consumed her life, the secrets that poisoned her existence, can finally end. The chain of anger and hatred that defined generations can be broken. One question lingers in the aftermath of this devastating story. Did Nawal do the right thing by sending her children on this journey? Should she have taken these secrets to her grave, or was revealing the truth, no matter how terrible, the only way to achieve freedom and break the cycles of violence that war creates? Some truths are so horrifying that learning them seems to destroy everything. But perhaps, in the end, only the truth, no matter how painful, can truly set anyone free. What do you think? Share your thoughts below.